The massive chamber of the Galactic Council was silent, save for the low hum of the artificial gravity generators and the soft buzz of communication devices. The representatives of dozens of species sat in their designated seats, their attention focused on the central dais where Ambassador Jonathan Kerr stood. His dark suit, emblazoned with the Earth Alliance insignia, contrasted sharply with the brightly colored, ornate clothing of the other council members. He was the lone human in a sea of alien diplomats, each with their own motives, alliances, and intentions. But today, Earth's voice was the one that mattered. Kerr straightened his tie, his fingers brushing against the smooth fabric as he prepared to speak. The proposal he had put forward, a trade agreement between Earth and the Galactic Council that would allow humanity to share its technological advancements, was at the heart of the meeting. It had the potential to elevate Earth's standing in the galaxy, but not everyone was pleased with the idea. Among the most vocal detractors was Zaylor, Supreme Xylothian Overseer. The Xylothians were an ancient species, renowned for their ruthless military conquests and their sheer physical power. They were not fond of humanity's rapid rise. Despite being relatively new to the galactic stage, humans had proven themselves to be strategic thinkers, adept negotiators, and fierce combatants when necessary. The Xylothians, on the other hand, believed in domination through force, and the idea of a peaceable, technologically advanced humanity threatened the status quo they had carefully built over centuries. As Kerr stepped forward, he felt the weight of the room press down on him. The eyes of hundreds of representatives were upon him, some curious, some skeptical, and others outright hostile. Yet Kerr's demeanor never wavered. He had faced more dangerous negotiations than this, but the stakes were never as high. If the proposal failed, it could plunge Earth into a war it wasn't ready for. If it succeeded, humanity would have a seat at the table of the galaxy's most powerful beings. Zaylor's voice cut through the stillness like a blade. "You are playing a dangerous game, Kerr." Zaylor's voice echoed, his words thick with disdain. The Xylothian Overseer towered over the council chamber, his dark, segmented armor reflecting the dim light. His red eyes glowed ominously. "You think you can simply offer humanity's technology to the Council and expect us to welcome you with open arms? You forget your place in the galaxy." Kerr met his gaze unflinching. His voice was calm, measured. "I'm not here to make enemies, Zaylor. Earth is offering a fair deal to the Council, one that benefits us all. It's an opportunity for cooperation, not conflict." The room stirred with murmurs. Kerr could feel the tension in the air, but he didn't let it show. He knew that if he lost his composure, the negotiation would slip away. Zaylor, on the other hand, seemed to relish the tension. The Xylothian had always been one to impose his will through intimidation. Zaylor's eyes narrowed. "You're naive, human. You talk of cooperation, but your kind is far too unpredictable. We've seen your wars, your conquests. What makes you think you can be trusted with such power?" He stood up slowly, the movement deliberate, almost theatrical. "If the Council agrees to this deal, we will be forced to reconsider the balance of power. Earth's rise will not go unchallenged." Kerr didn't flinch. He had anticipated this. "I understand your concerns, Zaylor, but the Earth Alliance is not interested in conquest. We're offering technology that can benefit everyone: health advancements, energy solutions, environmental restoration. We want peace. If you want to test our resolve, then by all means, let's see how far you're willing to push it." Zaylor's eyes flashed with rage, but he didn't speak immediately. He was calculating, like a predator sizing up his prey. The Xylothian was known for his arrogance, but Kerr knew that beneath the bluster, Zaylor was a seasoned diplomat, just like him. He wasn't here to start a war, but he was prepared to do what was necessary to protect Earth's interests. A slight rustle came from the far side of the room. The council speaker, a creature whose long tentacles glistened in the dim light, raised a hand. The speaker's voice was soft, but commanding. "We cannot afford to let this discussion devolve into threats. We are here to negotiate, not to provoke war. Let us proceed with a fair exchange of ideas." The speaker's intervention was a welcome relief, but Kerr knew the battle wasn't over. Zayler's words had planted seeds of doubt in the minds of several members, particularly those from species who had once been allies of the Xylothian Dominion. The Council was a delicate balance of power, and any shift could tip the scales in unpredictable ways. Zayler sneered. Let us proceed then, human. But remember, the Xylothian Dominion does not take kindly to those who think they can undermine our authority. This trade deal, this opportunity you speak of, is a thinly veiled attempt to challenge us. You would do well to remember that. Kerr took a deep breath, his hands still resting lightly on the surface of the dais. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. The eyes of the council members were all on him now, waiting for his response. If the price of cooperation is a threat of war, Zayler, Kerr said softly, but with steel in his voice, then I am prepared to face it. But know this, humanity will not back down. We will never be intimidated into submission. And if it comes to war, it will not be on your terms. A murmur rippled through the room. Kerr's words hung in the air, each syllable more powerful than the last. He wasn't just defending Earth's proposal. He was standing up to the most powerful force in the galaxy. His resolve was unwavering. Zayler's eyes blazed with fury, but he said nothing. The room held its breath, the tension thick and palpable. The speaker raised a hand again, signaling for calm. Enough. We will adjourn for a brief recess to allow the parties to consider their positions. As the chamber emptied, Kerr remained at the dais, his thoughts racing. He had made his stand, but the real battle had only just begun. The Xylothians wouldn't give up easily, and neither would he. This was far from over. And the stakes had never been higher. The Galactic Council chamber was eerily quiet after the recess. Ambassador Jonathan Kerr stood before the grand window, watching the stars streak by as the massive space station drifted through the void. The silence in the room was oppressive. It wasn't the stillness of peace, it was the stillness before a storm. Zayler's threat still hung in the air, and the Council's deliberations had stalled. Kerr knew that each passing moment only made things more dangerous. The Xylothians had the power to make good on their words, and though Earth's military had become formidable, it was still no match for Zayler's fleet. Kerr wasn't foolish enough to underestimate the might of the Xylothian Dominion. Behind him, the doors to the briefing rooms slid open. Kerr didn't need to turn to know who it was. The footsteps were unmistakable. His aide, Lieutenant Mara Vasquez, the sharpest strategist Earth had at its disposal. She was one of the few people he trusted to think ahead as he did. Anything new? Kerr asked without turning. Mara's voice was tense. The Xylothians aren't backing down, Ambassador. In fact, they've made secret agreements with several of the smaller factions on the Council. It's clear they're trying to sway votes. Kerr turned to face her, his gaze narrowing. Which factions? Glanther, Verdiac, and the Soli, their representatives have all been seen in private meetings with Zayler's envoys. They're already making deals to support him. Kerr swore under his breath. These factions were not insignificant. The Glanther, with their advanced biotech and vast resources, could tip the balance of power in Zayler's favor. The Verdiac were traders and negotiators, highly influential in economic matters, and the Soli, a race of diplomatic tacticians, could sway the vote with their subtle influence. This is no longer just about Earth and the Xylothians, Kerr muttered, his fingers drumming lightly on the surface of the briefing table. This is about every faction in the Council choosing sides. If we don't act quickly, we risk losing everything. Mara crossed her arms. The question is, what can we do? Zayler's not someone you can talk down. He's already got half the Council in his corner, and the rest are teetering on the edge. Kerr's jaw tightened. He'd expected a challenge, but this was worse than he had anticipated. Zayler had played this game before, and he was good at it. Kerr couldn't just outthink the Xylothian. He had to find a way to turn the table without giving up Earth's dignity. I've been in touch with the Alliance Council, Kerr said, pausing as he checked the status on his wrist calm. They're willing to make one last concession. We can offer Zayler more power within the Council, but only if he agrees to a long-term ceasefire agreement. A win-win for everyone except Zayler's pride. But that could backfire, Mara replied, her voice filled with caution. Zaylor thrives on his dominance. Giving him more power would only embolden him further. Kerr's eyes glinted. And that's exactly why he might take the offer. He won't back down without making sure he gets something in return. If we can feed his ego enough, he'll see the offer as a victory, a way to save face. Mara frowned. It's a dangerous gamble. And you'd have to convince the entire council to support it. That's why we need leverage, Kerr said, his mind working furiously. He picked up a datapad and accessed the files that had been sent to him earlier. I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. The meeting reconvened just a few hours later. Kerr walked into the chamber, his mind focused, but the weight of the situation pressed on him. Zaylor was seated at the far end, his posture still imposing, his crimson eyes narrowing as Kerr entered. The Xylothian's words from earlier echoed in his mind, "If you think you can challenge us, you are gravely mistaken." Kerr wasn't foolish enough to challenge Zaylor directly. Instead, he would give the Xylothian what he wanted, but only in a way that ensured Earth's position would remain secure. He approached the dais, and the murmurs of the council quieted. The speaker raised a hand, signaling for silence. "Ambassador Kerr, you have the floor." Kerr straightened, his posture mirroring the formality of the chamber. He scanned the faces of the representatives, some indifferent, some openly hostile, and a few who were waiting to see which side would emerge victorious. "I stand before you today to propose a new course of action," Kerr began. "The Earth Alliance is prepared to make a bold offer to the Xylothian Dominion. A proposal that will secure peace and ensure that humanity's place in the galaxy remains undisputed." A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Kerr's words were calculated, and his tone was even, but the stakes were clear. He could feel the weight of the council's gaze on him. "You see," Kerr continued, "humanity does not seek war. We seek balance, unity, and opportunity. Earth has risen from the ashes of war to become a leader in galactic peace. We offer technology, health, energy, and scientific advancements for the benefit of the entire galaxy." Zaylor's gaze never left him. "What are you offering, Kerr?" His voice was laced with contempt, but Kerr saw the glimmer of curiosity in his eyes. Zaylor wanted to know what Kerr would give in exchange for peace. Kerr smiled thinly, knowing exactly how to play this. "We offer you a position of influence within the Council, one that elevates the Xylothian Dominion to a position of prominence. We will also extend a strategic partnership, one that guarantees access to our technology, but on our terms. This is a deal that benefits both parties." The room fell into stunned silence. Zaylor's lip curled into a smirk. "You offer me more power in a council that I already control?" Kerr's eyes gleamed with quiet confidence. "Power is only valuable when it's recognized, Overseer. And right now, the galaxy does not recognize the Dominion's full potential. But this deal will change that. You will be given the opportunity to lead, not just through strength, but through wisdom." Zaylor's eyes flashed. He rose slowly, towering over Kerr, his armor gleaming under the council lights. "You think I will accept your terms?" Kerr stood his ground, not flinching. "I think you will, because you have no choice. You are not invincible, Zaylor. Your Dominion is powerful, but it is not all-powerful. And if we go to war, both of our factions will suffer. Your allies will turn their backs on you. The Council will fracture. And the galaxy will find a new balance." The tension was thick, the words hanging heavy in the air. Zaylor's gaze locked with Kerr's. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of breathing and the weight of unspoken threats. Finally, Zaylor's voice broke the silence. "I will consider your offer. But remember this, Kerr, if I find it insufficient, war will be the only option." Kerr nodded, his calm unbroken. "And I will be ready for that. But I hope, for the sake of the galaxy, we never have to reach that point." As the meeting drew to a close, Kerr knew the battle had just begun. He had planted the seeds of a potential victory, but Zaylor's pride would not be easily swayed. The next few days would determine whether peace or war would define the future of humanity. The corridors of the Galactic Council Station were as quiet as ever, the artificial light flickering occasionally as Ambassador Jonathan Kerr made his way to the strategy room. The faint hum of machinery was a constant, the pulse of the vast station that orbited the blackness of space. Inside, the stakes had never been higher. The council was at a crossroads, and Kerr could feel the tension like a live wire humming beneath the surface. He entered the room, the door sliding shut behind him with a soft hiss. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez was already there, her eyes trained on the screen before her. The tactical display illuminated her face in an eerie green glow, but her expression was unreadable. Kerr's eyes flicked to the display. "Anything new?" She looked up, her face hardening. "The votes tomorrow. Zayler's envoys are in full swing, meeting with the Verdiac and Galanther factions. They've all but secured their support. The Soli are still on the fence, but their representative, Zekayar, is known for his subtlety. If they throw their weight behind Zayler, it could be the end of this." Kerr clenched his jaw. "Then it's time we make our move." He paced to the far end of the room, staring out at the view beyond the window, a sprawling galaxy full of stars, each one representing a system, a possibility, a risk. "We need something they can't ignore. Something that changes the calculus." Mara nodded, already understanding where he was going. "You're thinking about leverage." Kerr turned. "Exactly. If Zayler's playing his cards right, he's counting on everyone else to fall in line. What if we give them a reason to question that?" Mara's gaze sharpened. "You're talking about the Xylothians' biggest vulnerability, fracturing their alliances." Kerr's lips twitched into a grim smile. "They won't see it coming." The next few hours were a blur of planning. Kerr, with Mara's help, orchestrated a carefully constructed plan. A data packet containing intercepted communications from a secret meeting between Zayler's envoys and the Galanther delegation was the key. The documents revealed an underhanded deal. The Xylothian Dominion had promised military assistance to the Galanther in exchange for their support in the Council, essentially bribing them to join the war effort should negotiations fail. This was the kind of leverage Kerr needed, an irrefutable piece of evidence that Zayler was not merely negotiating, but manipulating the very heart of the Council for his own gain. "This could be our ticket," Mara said as she finalized the encryption, ensuring the file could only be opened by the right people. "If we get this to the right ears, Zayler's alliances will crack wide open." "Exactly," Kerr said, leaning over her shoulder. "Let's make sure it's delivered to the Soli first. If they can't back Zayler without risking their own political future, they'll have no choice but to turn against him." The timing had to be perfect. There was no room for error. They couldn't afford to tip their hand too early, not until Zayler believed he was in control. As Kerr left the strategy room, he knew that the game had moved into a new phase, one where every action had to be calculated. The following day, the council convened once more. Kerr entered the chamber with a sense of calm that belied the storm he was about to unleash. The large round table was filled with representatives, their alien forms all unique and imposing. Zayler was at his usual spot, flanked by his closest allies, his presence as oppressive as ever. He didn't acknowledge Kerr as he entered, but Kerr could feel the weight of the Xylothian's gaze. As the speaker called the meeting to order, the air was thick with unspoken tension. The vote was fast approaching, and the fate of the human proposal hung in the balance. Kerr could already sense the subtle shift in the atmosphere, as the various factions of the council prepared to make their decisions. Zayler's influence had spread like a virus, but Kerr knew he had a cure, a very precise one. The speaker turned to Kerr, signaling him to present his case. The chamber fell silent, all eyes on the human diplomat. Kerr stood, his hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the room. His voice was calm, but every word was deliberate, measured. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Kerr began, his voice cutting through the thick tension. "It is clear that we are on the cusp of a decision that will shape the future of our galaxy. But as we stand at this crossroads, I urge you to consider the full implications of the choices before us." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle in the room. "My delegation has worked tirelessly to create a fair and mutually beneficial agreement. But some here believe that peace is a mere formality. That the true path forward lies not in cooperation, but in dominance. Kerr's eyes flicked toward Zaylor, who remained unfazed, his eyes half closed in that typical, self-satisfied manner. The Xylothian knew exactly what was coming, but Kerr's next words hit like a hammer. We have uncovered a series of communications that reveal an alarming truth about the Xylothian Dominion's tactics in this negotiation. Kerr continued, pulling a small device from his jacket. The screen projected an image of the intercepted data, and Kerr activated it. The image of the Galactic representative appeared, along with encrypted messages between the Xylothian Dominion and Galactic officials. The messages outlined a deal for military assistance, an unspoken promise of support in the event of war. The room gasped in collective disbelief. Kerr turned to face the room. This is not negotiation. This is coercion. The Dominion has been leveraging threats of military action to ensure their dominance. A clear violation of the principles this council was founded upon. Zaylor's face twisted into a mask of fury, but Kerr pressed on. I trust that the members of this council will not tolerate such tactics. The Xylothians seek not peace, but the manipulation of this body for their own selfish agenda. There was a long pause as the room absorbed Kerr's words. The speaker raised a hand to silence the murmurs, his voice low and calm. This is grave news indeed. Zaylor, you are aware of the allegations made against your faction. Do you have anything to say in response? Zaylor stood slowly, his towering figure casting a shadow over the council. He sneered at Kerr. This is a lie. A calculated attempt to undermine the Dominion. Earth's desperation is showing. You've fabricated this to shift the balance of power. Kerr's lips curled into a thin smile. The truth speaks for itself, Zaylor. If you cannot defend your actions, then you have no place in this council. The silence that followed was deafening. Zaylor's eyes flicked between the council members, trying to gauge their reactions. The room was no longer on his side. The weight of the evidence Kerr had presented had struck a decisive blow. The speaker turned to the council. We will now deliberate. The vote will take place shortly. As Kerr returned to his seat, he allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The first part of the plan had worked. Zaylor had lost his hold, but the next steps were even more critical. The balance of power had shifted, but the final outcome was still uncertain. He had one more play to make, and it had to be perfect. The room was alive with tension. The quiet hum of the Galactic Council chamber now felt like a pressure cooker, each second building toward an inevitable confrontation. Kerr stood at the edge of the vast council table, his mind running through the possible outcomes of the vote. The intercepted data had caused ripples, but Zaylor's last-ditch attempt to twist the truth would not be easy to counter. He had already begun to rally his remaining allies, and they solely, though swayed by the evidence, were hesitant to break ranks. Across the room, Zaylor's imposing figure was once again at the heart of the Xylothian delegation, his posture regal, his eyes hard and cold. Kerr couldn't ignore the simmering rage beneath his calm exterior. Zaylor's pride had been wounded. And that was dangerous. The speaker's voice broke through the tension, calling the assembly to order. The matter at hand is critical. It is time for the council to decide whether to approve the trade agreement proposed by Earth or to reject it, under the threat of war. Kerr's gaze swept the room. The smaller factions, those with vested interests in trade and stability, seemed to lean toward Earth's proposal, despite Zaylor's best efforts. But the larger, more powerful factions, Glanther, Verdiac, and Soli, were still teetering. Kerr knew that the final decision rested on one last maneuver. He had prepared for this moment. He had studied every aspect of the Xylothian Dominion, every flaw, every weakness. But now, in the final hours, he had to rely on something more than strategy. He had to rely on his ability to think beyond the immediate. This was no longer about evidence or threats. It was about outwitting an ancient and prideful species. Ambassador Kerr. The speaker's voice was level but carried authority. You have the floor. Present your case. Kerr straightened, his voice unwavering. Thank you, Speaker. He glanced at Zaylor, whose stare could have burned through the entire room. Honored representatives, I stand before you not only as a diplomat for Earth but as someone who believes in the future of this galaxy. A future that does not need to be defined by fear and domination. He paused, his eyes steady on Zaylor. We have already shown you the lengths to which we are willing to go for peace. But peace cannot exist under the shadow of tyranny. The evidence presented is irrefutable. The Xylothian Dominion has tried to manipulate the Council with promises of power and military support. They have threatened war at every turn, not to protect the galaxy, but to expand their control. Kerr took a step forward, his voice rising in intensity. We are not asking for special treatment. We are offering a deal that benefits everyone. Technology, trade, stability. We are willing to share knowledge that will elevate all of us. But it must be on equal terms. The days of brute force being the deciding factor in galactic affairs must come to an end. Zaylor's lip curled. He stood slowly, his towering form casting a long shadow over the chamber. You speak of peace, Kerr. But I know what your kind is truly after. You are no different from the others who have tried to challenge us. You want to replace us. To destroy everything we've built. Kerr did not flinch. What we want, Zaylor, is a future where no one has to live in fear of being crushed by the weight of another's power. What we want is a future where all species, regardless of size or strength, can coexist. Zaylor's eyes blazed with fury, but he controlled himself, choosing his next words carefully. You think you can come to my home, challenge my people, and not face consequences? You are a fool, Kerr. Your precious Earth is not the center of this galaxy. It is but a speck in a vast, dangerous expanse. Kerr's calm was unshaken. That may be true, Zaylor. But I am not here to make the center of the galaxy Earth. I am here to make humanity's place among the stars something others can respect. And I do not ask for permission to exist, nor do I ask for forgiveness for the things we've done to get here. There was a quiet tension in the air now, as if every person present knew the importance of this moment. Zaylor's eyes narrowed. You dare speak of respect when your species has already proven itself a threat to the established order? If you think your diplomacy will save you, you are mistaken. The Council held its collective breath. The time for diplomacy was running out, but Kerr wasn't done yet. I understand your concerns, Zaylor, he said, his voice suddenly soft, almost reflective. The Xylothian Dominion is an ancient power. You've fought for your place in the galaxy, and I do not discount that. But it is time for a new way of thinking. Kerr pressed a button on his wrist communicator, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room, projecting an image of the Xylothian fleet, their greatest strength. You may have the largest fleet in the galaxy, Zaylor, but you are not invincible. The Xylothian Empire is crumbling from the inside. Your people are divided. Your power is built on fear, not loyalty. A murmur passed through the Council. Zaylor's face twisted in anger, but Kerr pressed on, showing the cracks in the Xylothian facade. We've intercepted communications from within your fleet. There are whispers of rebellion among your ranks. Your soldiers, your people, are questioning the way you lead them. The Xylothian's rage was palpable, but Kerr saw something in his eyes, fear. Zaylor knew that if the truth spread, his rule would collapse. Kerr stepped back, letting the silence fill the room. I am not here to destroy you, Zaylor. I am here to offer you an opportunity. A chance to rebuild. A chance to lead through wisdom, not force. Zaylor's fists clenched, and for a long moment, he seemed to weigh his options. The room watched in rapt silence, the outcome hanging in the balance. Finally, Zaylor spoke, his voice cold and measured. You believe your kind can change the galaxy with your idealism. But know this, Kerr, if you think I will bend to your will, you are mistaken. The Xylothian Dominion does not bow to anyone. Kerr's smile was small but genuine. Perhaps not. But you may find, Zaylor, that it is far more rewarding to be respected than feared. Zaylor's eyes flicked between Kerr and the rest of the Council. The pressure was too great. He knew the vote was imminent, and the weight of Kerr's words had begun to take root. Slowly, he turned away, his movements deliberate, and sat back down with a palpable air of frustration. The speaker nodded, signaling the end of the debate. It is time for the vote. Kerr's heart raced as the chamber fell into a hushed silence. The fate of Earth, and the galaxy, hung on the edge of this moment. The council members cast their votes in turn, each one weighted with history, fear, and hope. As the final votes were counted, the outcome was clear. The deal was approved. The room erupted in applause, but Kerr barely heard it. His eyes were fixed on Zaylor, whose face betrayed nothing but simmering rage. But for the first time, Kerr felt the true weight of victory. The galaxy had changed in that moment, and humanity's place in it had been secured.